Hey there, Facebook. Welcome to today's live stream. Really excited. We've got a wonderful interview for you all today. And I'm here with Serena as well. How are you doing, Serena?
Hi, everybody again. How you going?
I'm sure everyone's doing fantastically. So today we've got a live interview today with Amanda, who's tuned in all the way from Dubai. She's an entrepreneur, international speaker, and business startup expert and consultant to offshore companies and helping companies scale in offshore countries. So for years, she's helped companies develop international presences, structure themselves for success, and grow astronomically through international markets. Thank you so much for being a part of today's show, Amanda. Really appreciate it. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Wow, what an introduction. I hope I live up to
that. You definitely will. You definitely will. So for those people that may not know too much about you, Amanda, can you give us just a little bit of a brief sort of understanding on your background, yourself, and what you've done to today as well, just to share with the audience?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a very little remote place. Not many people will know of it. It's called Guernsey in the Channel Islands. And Guernsey is a very well-respected offshore financial jurisdiction. Okay. Growing up in Guernsey, you either end up working in tourism, growing the famous Guernsey tomatoes, or working in the offshore financial sector. So I've only just learned to grow tomatoes this past 6 months, so you can gather which one I chose as my career. And it put me on a really good path. I joined Ernst & Young, as it was then, obviously EY now. From there, I was headhunted to join a Dutch company. And I pretty much traveled the world with them, predominantly throughout the Caribbean, structuring and working with private trusts, private companies, and wealth management companies in that region, but traveling globally to understand the clients that we worked with, to understand their particular asset structuring needs, their tax planning needs, but also their entrepreneurial needs as well, because we were working with a lot of family offices and working with the younger generation of those families and helping them build wealth under their own name. So it was a very exciting time for me. I was very blessed to be traveling around the world in my early 20s, great places to live, Cayman Islands, Bahamas, and then ended up in Dubai. So, huh?
Cayman Islands and Bahamas, it sounds terrible.
Oh, yeah. You know, I was incredibly lucky. I would then travel around the west coast of America, down to Mexico as well. We had a strong client base there. So I've been very fortunate to travel the world and pick up on a lot of business practices from those areas and be able to apply that into an all-round general knowledge of business structuring, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and just general the behaviors of entrepreneurs, because ultimately that's what we look at when we are building structures with our clients, because it's not just about the legal structure that we're working with. What we're trying to do with them is consult with them on a basis so that we're understanding how it is that they like to work, so we can help them build their business in a way that's going to work for them. So what happened was 13 years ago, I moved here to the UAE. I was responsible for setting up the world's first Islamic trust company within the Dubai International Financial Center, which we did successfully. And then 10 years ago, I decided to take the plunge and set up my own business. I've been advising all these people for so long to do it. I thought it was time I actually took a spoonful of my own medicine. And I became an entrepreneur 10 years ago and founded my first business. And then 3 years ago, founded my second business. I say my second business, I had a bit of a wobble in the middle. I had one that didn't work, but I think we've all got one of those stories. So yeah, technically I'm on my third business, 10 years in. And we work with a lot of female entrepreneurs now. That's where our audience has kind of led us. We work with a lot of women entrepreneurs here in the region, but also globally, helping them set up businesses around the world, depending on what their requirements are, with the use of offshore companies as well as onshore structures. And then we work with a lot of grassroots entrepreneurs here in the region, in the Middle East, who are getting a strong footing in this region, building a business, and then wanting to expand globally. So we help them in terms of the licensing side of their business, but also on the planning side as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. This is great, because I know a lot of people do have, do market overseas, and they do have business presences overseas, and part of what you do is sort of helping structure that better, succession planning and so on as well, which is fundamentally an area that a lot of business entrepreneurs may not have in place themselves. So this is going to be a really insightful interview. Thanks so much for sharing a little bit more about yourself. For those of you that are tuning in live as well at the moment, make sure you like and share the stream. More people need to hear this information. Amanda was nice enough to jump on today and share her wealth of knowledge with all of you as well. So like and share the stream so more people can hear this, and we're going to dive deeper into things as well. So, and if you have any questions for Amanda, do feel free to hit them in the comments, and we can answer those today for you guys live as well. So in terms of like for a lot of businesses that are running them internationally, right? So they might be, say, running from Bali like SERENA is, or from Australia like I am, for example, or from anywhere around the world, and they're looking at sort of branching out internationally and expanding their business internationally. I mean, what should people be looking at prior to doing this? Is there like some sort of things that you believe people must do first before looking to venture into international markets and so on as well, or?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first of all, you need to establish what market is that you want to branch into. Once you've established that, you then need to look into those local licensing requirements and understand how it is that you're going to be operating in that particular country. I mean, with obviously everything that's happening with COVID-19, I think all of us have branched out to some extent in terms of our online presence and how we're able to deliver our services and in some cases products. Now, whilst for the most part, you can do that from where you're already based, there isn't much of a change. But there are some countries that require, if you're going to be importing into that jurisdiction, you need to have a trade license there. If you're going to be selling products or services in that country, you need to have a license there. Or even if you're marketing in that country, you need to have some form of representation or some form of license. So the first thing to do is not take the approach that you're going to be covered with the license or the structure that you've already got. Do your homework. Establish what it is that you're going to be offering exactly. Are you going to be physically selling? Are you accepting funds in that country? Are you employing people in that country? Do you need to pay tax in that country? Once you start asking yourself those questions, then you'll be able to determine whether you're going to need a legal presence in that country. And then it becomes a business decision. I mean, I'll give you as an example, the UAE is pretty expensive to get licensed within. The reason being we have no corporate taxation here. In fact, we have no other taxation. So the government effectively are taking almost a pre-tax, and that is your trade license fee. So if you're looking to branch into this region, you need to ask yourself as a business owner, okay, is that cost of me going to set up a worthwhile investment for the return that I'm planning on getting? And if the answer is yes, then, wonderful, do your homework, find out exactly how you're going to operate in this region, what kind of trade license you're going to need, and take yourself moving forward. If you don't think you're obviously going to recoup your costs, then, you need to take that business decision. Sometimes it's a tough decision and say, you know what, maybe that's not the region for me. Let me go somewhere else where it's easier for me to get established, more cost efficient for me to get established, get that international presence, and then branch further from there. It's never just about getting a trade license. The whole picture should be looked at in terms of how you're going to operate, what your return of investment is going to be. And always remember to put a value on your time, because branching out into another jurisdiction, whilst it sounds fantastic and now your website says you're international and your marketing material says you're global, wonderful, that's brilliant, and it's wonderful to market yourself in such a way because it gives you that credibility when you are established and doing that. that you do have to think about, what time restrictions am I going to be putting on myself by doing this? Is it going to impact my existing local business? Or should I be branching out and taking into consideration that perhaps I need people there on the ground who are going to give me the support that I need so that I can still work in my own existing business locally?
Great, great. Because like I think like with a lot of people, there's like this is great what you've just said, because like a lot of people are looking to branch out internationally and to market internationally. And I know a lot of some of the stuff that's spoken about, I guess, by our government as well, is that, you know, if you do have an international company or something, you pay taxes back in Australia and all this sort of stuff. And we're not going to be talking about that sort of stuff. Everything we do give is general advice today, of course. However, it's like if you were to market in another country and you were to be still based in somewhere like Australia or Bali or UAE or whatever, and you're going to market in America, you would still need to look at all these licensing and these different things within your planning in terms of moving into these countries. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of countries don't require you to have a license if you're just purely marketing, especially with online marketing nowadays. Okay. You can also market through agencies as well. So that agency is licensed in that country. I can give you an example. If you want to put a billboard up on a highway, you would need to probably, depending on the country that you're in, go through a local advertising and marketing agency who will get the required permits to put that billboard up. Online marketing is obviously a completely different scenario. And as we're all learning, pre-COVID and post-COVID, you know, we can all run an ad to run in a country through Facebook, through Instagram. So online marketing, there's very little restrictions. It's more about the collection of funds because of taxation. It's more about employment of people on the ground. So if you are going to be distributing goods in America, so you've marketed them, wonderful, no issues there. But now you need to either collect funds as a result of that marketing activity, and you need to distribute whatever it is that you're selling as a result of that marketing activity in the sale. Those are the considerations that you need to take into account for whether you need a trade license or not, or okay, some form of on the ground agreement that says you're allowed to operate in that country.
Amazing. Okay, cool. That's good. That's really insightful. And those of you that are like, for any of you that have questions around this, continue to engage into this as well, and ask, like and share, so more people can hear this type of information as well. So I guess that's really cool, like to understand that's the distribution and it's the collecting of money and so on that's important to have within your plan as to whether you're going to need structures and so on in that country as well. So in terms of like this as well, so if someone was to like open a company in a foreign country, is there like, I guess, is there different types of structures that are available, or I guess it would vary from country to country, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah, very much so. There's thousands of different types of structures that can be created out of a myriad of types of different vehicles, depending on the country, jurisdiction, region that you're in. And a lot of it's based on law. So, for example, if you're dealing with a lot of the offshore jurisdictions, they're based originally on English common law. And people will gravitate to laws that they understand. For example, in France, you have a very different system of law than you do in England, but neither are recognized by one another. I mean, obviously, they're understood and recognized in terms of a level of understanding, but in terms of implementation, they're very, very different. So I would say is probably one of the best things to do is, if you are looking to set up a structure in another jurisdiction, make sure that you understand the law, because common law can be very different from other types of law that happen and occur in other jurisdictions of the world. And it's important that you understand that, because it affects inheritance planning, it affects tax planning, and just your overall company behaviors. If you're used to working in an environment that's common law and you go and work in a different jurisdiction that implements a different type of law, it's very difficult to naturally behave in that environment, because it's not something you're used to, if that makes sense.
It does, definitely, it definitely does. Okay, cool. So, and it's really, it would be best to reach out to somebody anyway to get the right advice from this type of, if you are looking to expand internationally and set up structures in different jurisdictions.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think all of us are branching out to a certain extent right now, because COVID has made us realize that the whole world is our oyster, really, isn't it? We have access to so many markets with a lot of online tools. And I would say 99% of the time, you don't need to bolt anything onto your existing structure. You're able to operate. But if you are looking more on creating a physical presence and delivering something in that country, absolutely. Or if you're looking to create something rather more complex because of your personal circumstances, and you're going to need to set up a variety or a blend of complex offshore structures, absolutely, get the right advice, not just from a structuring perspective, but from a tax perspective. Tax in your home country, and then tax in the jurisdiction that you're going to be setting up the structures within. Now, a lot of structures are set up and they have no real connection to either where you are based and living and where you are going to be doing business. It's just that the structure is able to facilitate those two parts together. So again, it can get very complex. It doesn't need to be, but it can do. So always get advice. It's always cheaper to pay for advice in the first place than pay for someone to come and fix it afterwards.
And I think that's true across all aspects of business as well. It can be cheaper to get advice as opposed to working it out and doing it yourself and getting into trouble somewhere, or spending money you didn't really need to spend in certain areas. So that's cool. That's cool. So there's like, some of it's done for tax advantages and may not even have any sort of relativity to the type of trading you're doing. That's what you were saying there before. So some of it could be, relative to tax advantages as opposed to what you're physically doing in business each day.
Yeah. I mean, the tax advantages now are getting more and more limited, because what's happening is residents in their own countries are becoming required to declare income on worldwide assets, which never used to be the case in all countries. There's taxation agreements between obviously many countries now, and there's benefits for that, but there's also disclosure on other parts. So, tax probably isn't the biggest reason for most people setting up structures elsewhere in the world now. It's more about the ease of doing business, the succession of that business, and that leads into the long-term planning. But certainly taxation is not the biggest reason people are setting up offshore structures nowadays. Certainly used to be when I started out. There was a lot. Yeah, I mean, it was very much
if you have an offshore structure somewhere as well too, what I find is really good, because I have an APEC card for travel, which of course we're not traveling at the moment. But when we were traveling, sometimes, I could do 20 flights in 1 month, some months. And being in an airport and getting stuck in airports is really bad. So when you've got your APEC card, which is having a business outside your country that you can do trade with, gets you in and out those airports so fast. It's just amazing. Plus no visa, 60-day no visa, whatever. So for me, that's a benefit of having a company outside, depending on whether you just set one up just for that purpose, or, I had one set up because I was using it. But I wanted to just give you a question we talked about the other day in regards to, you recommended I need to have a company offshore, just not for tax purposes, as you said, but for other purposes. I have a European passport, and I was looking to see what would be the easiest place to set up some sort of company structure that wouldn't be too hard and too difficult. Not to trade out there, it's still to trade in Australia, but just to be able to use the services, leisure facilities and all that. And you suggested, was it Isle of Man?
So yeah, I mean, you told me you had a European passport. So it does make life an awful lot easier if you've got a European passport to set up a European structure, depending on what it is that you're going to be doing. I think you mentioned you wanted to get merchant and banking services. Yeah, so Isle of Man is a fantastic place to set up for that, because they've got a very robust banking regime. Isle of Man is based on common law, which is applicable to your European passport. There are quite a lot of advantages of setting up in Isle of Man. It's a very credible jurisdiction. Setting up a company there is pretty much quite straightforward. Setting up the banking and the merchant facilities are straightforward. And then you've got the credibility of the double taxation agreements between Isle of Man and whether you're dealing with Australia, your European passport nation, or whether you're dealing with your Bali entity. There'll be something within that structure whereby you can probably bolt on a lot of extra benefits as well. I don't know your personal structure, so I couldn't say for sure. But in terms of what you mentioned to me on the phone the other day, in what you want to do, I would say Isle of Man would be a good option for you, primarily because of the EU passport that you already hold. A lot of people like to work with offshore jurisdictions that are almost local to them. So, for example, I work with quite a lot of North Africa, well, not just North African, MENA, North Africa, and Southern African clients. And Mauritius is a very popular choice for them because it's something that is in their geographical radar. They understand it. As a passport holder, either in South Africa or North Africa, Mauritius is recognised. Australians, Vanuatu is a very popular choice for setting up an offshore company, or New Zealand as well. New Zealand's got a very good structuring and licensing process and sort of library, as it were, available. There's some very clever structures that can be created out of there. Europeans, yeah, we do like the Isle of Man. We do like the Caribbean because they are the British West Indies. It's law that we understand, common law. And a lot of those company laws that have been created in those jurisdictions have been built on the original English common law system and the English common company law system.
So why would, just to try to think of what other people would want in regards to this, why would anybody else want to set up a business outside and have an offshore account, even if they're working in from whatever country they're working in? What would be some of the reasons that a lot of people would look at, or that you're finding mostly?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the work we're doing now is in terms of IP registration, IP protection, franchising, and just I would say more on, definitely on the IP side, so the non-physical asset. So, for example, you've built a successful business in your home country, you've developed a lot of IP, a lot of content which forms part of your IP, you might own trademarks or registrations. An offshore company is a very good place to hold those. The reason being, the offshore company is more internationally recognized than probably the local company that you're working with. And to be able to register that IP on more of a global level, the use of an offshore company can be very beneficial. It also is a good place to store the IP because it's separate from your trading activities. So you're segregating the risk. You've got your operating activity here. The risk and the asset is segregated to that particular company as a unit, as a cell, as it were. Your IP, your trademark, your copyright, I would say your non-physical asset value is stored in a separate cell, which is your new company in an offshore jurisdiction, and protected. So if there's a liability here, it doesn't affect the asset here. It also means that if you're looking at an exit plan and your IP has value and you want to sell that, you can just sell the shares of the offshore company, and that makes it much more attractive for a potential buyer as well, because you're not having to deconstruct your existing business and sell the IP out of that, and that person having to do business with the Australian company who might not necessarily be an Australian citizen or resident. So the offshore company just makes it a smoother, easier, quicker and cheaper transaction. If you're looking, for example, we were talking about branching out earlier, branching out can be done very easily through franchise, providing you've built a business that is franchisable. And it's a great way nowadays of expanding globally. You know, if you don't want to spread yourself too thin, actually, and we're doing this with our own business, we're franchising at the moment, the female accelerator that we operate. But if you don't want to spread yourself too thin and find yourself operating in 15 different countries, well, then don't. Build your business in such a way that it can be franchised, sell the franchise and just manage those franchises. But develop the franchise using an offshore company with the use of IP, and have your franchise agreements through that offshore jurisdiction, because again, it makes it more attractive for the potential franchise buyers to deal with that offshore company rather than your particular home country, because your particular home country is relevant for you. It doesn't make it necessarily relevant for your franchise buyer, whereas an offshore company, it has that more vanilla global attraction.
Great. This is some really great, like, amazing information too, by the way, because I know that a lot of people that are coming through, we have had people talk about franchises, we've had people talk about licensing, we've had people talk about just various different ways that they're structuring things or looking to structure things recently as well. And this is super, super valuable for those people. If you guys are getting plenty from this stream today, just like and share the stream. Just send it out to some more people as well. Let us know in the comments you're getting some value from today as well. Because yeah, like, obviously this is all completely free for you guys, and you're getting heaps of valuable information that normally you would pay thousands of dollars for. So just let us know in the comments. Just say value into the comments. Just let us know that you're getting some value from today as well, and we'll continue doing more of this as well, because Amanda's been nice enough to give us some time with her today to really dive deeper into this for you guys as well. So share the stream out, like it, so more people can get access to this type of information too. Is there anything else that you believe is probably important that people should be thinking about before looking to start their, to look at expanding their business internationally, or any sort of structures or anything that people should be looking for before looking to do this, or while they're doing this, or after they've done this as well? Is there other thoughts that you have, or anything else you'd like to share on this subject that should be relevant for people?
There's obviously the fairly obvious, which is, have a plan in mind and have a plan B as well. Have a clear objective of what you're trying to achieve. I've had people come to me and say, oh, I need to set up an offshore company for this. And then when we dig deeper, actually, they don't need one. It's just that Bob down the road told them they should have one too. So, understand why it is that you need to add to your structure, because your structure might be working very, very well as it is. And I don't believe in complexity if it's not necessary. There's a lot of complex structures that I have built over the years, but that's out of necessity. Don't overcomplicate it if you don't need to. And I don't like to dwell on things like this, but ultimately, in your passing, someone needs to sort that stuff out afterwards. And if you've got a very complex structure, you're just adding, more pain to an already upsetting situation. Most people create these structures so that there is perpetual succession, so that a family is looked after, the family wealth has been protected, the business can continue. I'll give you an example here. Here in the UAE, it is a Muslim country. We are subject to Sharia inheritance law. Even as a non-Muslim, I'm subject to Sharia inheritance law on physical assets here in the UAE. Now, there are will structures and other structures that can be created which safeguard certain assets, but they don't necessarily safeguard all assets from Sharia inheritance. So my companies here in the UAE are owned by offshore companies, and I own them jointly with my husband, because we can own assets jointly in that offshore company. We can't own assets jointly here. We can own the shares of my company, for example, 2 each, but that's called severally. So he owns 2 shares, I own 2 shares. It means that if something happens to me, my 2 shares pass to my estate. Whereas if we own those 4 shares jointly, it means we effectively own half a share of each 4. So if something happens to me, he automatically has the holding of becomes the new shareholder of those shares. So that's not possible in the UAE jointly. It can only be done severally, but it can be done in an offshore company. So that's the reason why I've got my offshore company set up, and that owns not only my IP, but it also owns the business assets through the shares of the company here in the UAE. So the point I'm making is I've done that so that if something happens to me, life in terms of my business carries on in a smooth way without any extra upset for my family. So back to the point is, don't create a structure that's going to be difficult for someone to have to deal with if you're not around. Create something that adds value, create something that makes life easier for yourself now, but it makes life easier for your estate after. Because most of us are creating something. So it's almost like a living will. We are creating something so that our families can continue to benefit on what we've built afterwards. So back to your question, what advice would I give? You know, keep it simple, unless, of course, absolutely it has to be complex, because that's the type of business that you're operating in and that's what works for you, but keep it simple. Get advice, but get advice from a professional. You know, our friends all have wonderful intentions, and yes, they may have great experience in setting up companies and have offshore structures and other structures themselves, but their experience is unique to them and unique to their situation. And whilst their intentions may be good, you know, this is not the time to utilize your friend's experience. This is the time to, you know, get expert, proper advice. If you are operating in a country that you pay tax in, or you are subject to some form of taxation, whether it be corporate or personal, you're going to be trading in a company that has taxation, or you're setting up a company for holding purposes or IP purposes that's subject to taxation, get tax advice. It's so important. And get tax advice specific to that jurisdiction, because tax laws throughout the world, I mean, throughout however many countries, vary. And it's you're not going to find one general tax practitioner. You need to seek out the advice in the various jurisdictions that affect you. And then it comes down to weighing up costs as well. You know, is setting up a structure that potentially could cost you $10,000 or $20,000 or however much it gets to, depending on the complexity or the size, is that going to add value to the business that you are operating, both in the short term and the long term? Once you've got all of those key factors understood and in place, then you can make a good decision.
I've got a quick question in regards to the offshore companies. You know, I'm one of these people, very right brain, very quick decision, very want things done sort of straight away. And I don't like going through pain of paperwork and all that kind of stuff. How easy is it to buy an offshore business?
Well, I mean, shelf companies now are becoming less and less because of disclosure and taxation purposes. So a shelf company was a company that was already established. It was held by the registrar or an agent. You could go and buy one. It could have been set up last week. It could have been set up last year, and it's ready to go. It's got a name. It's got provisional directors in place. You buy the company, you change the shareholding, change the directors, and if you want to, you change the name, go off and set up your bank account and do whatever else you need to do. Those are becoming less and less available because they were being used for backdating purposes. So people were buying companies that were 2 years old so that they could put something in place that benefited the history of that company. It wasn't necessarily done for ease of speed, because most offshore jurisdictions, you can get a company set up in 24 hours, 48 hours, providing you've got a certified copy of your passport. So it needs to be certified by a notary public, proof of address, either in its original form or certified by a notary public, a declaration of your source of funds, and your business details. So who are your first directors? Who are your shareholders? Registered office of the company. And depending on the offshore jurisdiction that you work with, they'll be providing you with a registered office. So for example, if you're setting up a company in the British Virgin Islands, you'll have a British Virgin Island registered office address, which will be provided by the agent who sets up your company in the BVI. So all of your directors need to have their passports certified as well. But if it's just you, you as the shareholder, you as the director, you as the secretary, if your passport's certified, your proof of address is certified, and your declaration of source of funds is complete, some might ask for a professional reference as well. But if you have all of that in place, there's no reason why in most places you can't get a company set up in a couple of days. It's banking now that takes a lot longer, because banking around the world has become more complex. There is a lot more scrutiny on banking. It's just the nature of the game, really. So be prepared for a longer wait on getting that stuff set up.
Great, that's awesome, and I understand from the banking side of things, just in Australia alone, the last few years has been pretty crazy. A lot of the stuff that's gone on, and it's all expanding across worldwide as well now too. So this is good. This has been really good, super valuable as well, because for any of you that are getting some serious value from this, just like, share, comment, any questions that you do have. As well, Amanda's here, so if you do have any questions now, here's your chance. So this is awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I know for a lot of people, because this is quite a complex matter, right? There's everyone with their individual own situations, and they may be thinking, okay, is an international company or setup or structure going to be right for me? Is it not going to be right for me based on present situations? Because everyone's got a different situation, they're going to need to really consult somebody to go through and work out if this is going to be the right fit for them. If somebody was to reach out to you and they were like, yes, I need some help with this, how would they go about reaching out to you?
Yeah, I mean, probably on Facebook is probably the easiest way nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're here right now. Yeah, sure. Hit me up on Facebook. No worries.
So you heard it. If you are looking into setting up international company structures, things like that for your business, you definitely want to go to an expert, somebody that knows exactly what they're talking about when it comes to setting things up, and making sure that you are not just setting things up for the sake of setting things up, but making sure that you are setting things up because it's actually beneficial to your company as well. Make sure that you reach out to Amanda. We've just put a link into the comments as well. You can just click on that and just send her a message, and she'll be able to help you out with the complexities, the setups, the structures, everything like that, to help you guys ensure that you're going to be getting the success in your company that you are after.
Yeah, and if you want my email address, just pop it in the comments, and I can pass that on as well.
Yeah, do you want to let us know what your email is here?
Oh, here now?
Yeah.
Sorry, Amanda.
Yep.
.Perry, Perry,
At Live Vitality or something?
at vitaluae.com.
Done.
So VITALUAE.com.
Let me just fix that.
UAE.com. Beautiful. Fantastic. Well, as I said, we really appreciate your time and everything today. And for all of you that are in here live right now, reach out to Amanda if you're really serious about looking to set up some proper structures in your company to expand internationally as well. As you can see, wealth of knowledge from today as well. She's been doing this for many, many years now, which is amazing. And we really appreciate you coming on the show today, Amanda, and really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been
great.
great.
A pleasure. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in as well. We've got lives coming at you guys all week, 12 o'clock Perth, Western Australia time. So be sure to tune in. And remember to be the warrior. We'll see you all very, very soon. Cheers.
Bye.